the monthly profit from your business seems to follow a cosine graph. Let me underline cosine curve that repeats 2 times every year. So you're going to have a cosine graph that repeats 2 times every year. All right, A is positive. That means the number in front of sine or cosine is positive, and h equals 0. Don't worry about h equals 0. We don't use h at this point, but I'm just saying it. Your initial profit, so your initial profit is $8,000. So you start off with an $8,000 profit at the beginning of each year. So at the beginning of the year, you're at $8,000. The least profit you ever make is $2,000. So the least profit's $2,000. So you're going to go between $8,000 to $2,000. So you always are making money, but you're fluctuating between $8,000 and $2,000. And it's a cosine graph. So I want to sketch the situation and then write the equation. So to sketch the equation, well, if I'm going from 2 to 8,000, let me put that, I'm going to put by 2s or 2,000s. So I'm going to go 2,000. And then we have 4,000, 6,000, 8,000. Are you okay? That's kind of how it's going to be fluctuating, from a 2,000 to an 8,000 high. Now, since it's cosine, won't a cosine start at the high? Isn't that how cosine works? It starts high and then drops and comes back up. Now, the interesting thing is this 2 times every year. Well, if I go over here, isn't a year 12 months? Okay. So, again, are you guys okay? This is months, and this is profit, money. So if a year is 12 months, but I'm doing it 2 times every year, well, isn't a single period going to be 6 months? So aren't we going to be graphing cosine in one period? We're going to go cosine, cosine, because we have 2 cosine graphs within a year. So 1 cosine graph is within 6 months. What that means is we're going to drop and come back up to $8,000 at 6 months. So halfway between, which is 3 months, aren't you going to go to your lowest point? Isn't that how cosine works? Halfway between, you go to your lowest. Now the key is, okay, wait, how do we find our midline? Our middle is right through here somewhere. How do you find it? Well, you can eyeball it, or you can average. So to average, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the high plus the low and average it, which would be 10 divided by 2, which is 5, or $5,000. So what I just figured out is $5,000 is right around here, and that's the average right there. So 5,000 is right smack in the middle. And if you look at that carefully, can you see you're going up 3, down 3,000? So if you average the high and the low, you get your middle. Okay, so that right there is 1 cycle. And if we were to add some more dots here, isn't halfway between you're going to hit the midline. And then you have a graph that kind of looks like this. Now the reason I'm making it a dotted graph is this is monthly profit. So the monthly profit's probably at the end of each month. So the dot is just giving us a picture of what it looks like. Because usually for monthly profit, you calculate at the end of the month. Now, if you have really good technology, you could calculate your profits every day if you got really good tracking of what's going on. But, so anyways, this is about what the profits are doing for 6 months. Now, won't it repeat? Because there's 2 of these within a year. So let's repeat this. So we're going to end at 12 at the same height. In the middle, we're going to go down to 2,000. And halfway between, we're going to hit the midline. So there's my second cycle. Now, if we wanted to, we could have just drawn this cycle and just understood there was another one coming up, but I thought I'd draw the whole year. So we sketched the equation. Our next question is to make the equation. So to make the equation, well, we need our midline, amplitude, and period. So our midline is going to be y equals $5,000. Our amplitude, well, if you look at it carefully, you're going up and down $3,000. And our period, Well, our period is actually 6 months. It's not 12 months, it's 6 months. Now, the one thing we have to make still, to make an equation, don't we have to change our period to get our b value? 6 is not our b. It's not, we use 6 to find our b value for our equation. So we're going to take 2 pi, because sinusoids have a period of 2 pi, and we divide by 6, which is pi over 3. So I'm going to write my equation. Here we go. It's going to be y equals, your a value is your amplitude, so it starts with a $3,000. We have a cosine graph, because that is what they said in the problem. Our b value, pi x over 3. Remember, we use our b, not our period. And lastly, we want to put our midline, which was at $5,000. That would be your equation. So we now have the equation and the graph. Let's answer these 3 questions. I want to find, it says right here, what is your average profit? Well, your average profit, you should know, is your midline. If you look at this graph, it would make sense that this is your average profit, which if you're a business, you really kind of care about what you're making on average. You have highs, you have lows, but you really care about this. So what is that average? Well, it is $5,000. So this person averages about $5,000 a month profit. Okay, next question is, when do you get the profit? Sorry, get the average profit. So when, it's talking months. So we have an average here, 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 and here. So there's 4 spots at which I get the average. So this is halfway between 0 and 3, which is halfway between 0 and 3. So that's what? It's on months, let's see, what would we have? Months 1.5 or 1.5. Halfway through month 1. Okay, the next one would be halfway between 3 and 6, which is 4.5. And then halfway between 6 and, what would this be, 8? No, 9. Halfway between 6 and 9, wouldn't that be 7.5? And halfway between 9 and 12 would be 10.5. So once again, these values don't make a lot of sense, because if we're taking profit at the end of the month, we can't really get halves. But it's given us a ballpark kind of just idea of where the averages would hit. So it's a little, these are kind of a little fib, but if we're talking end of the month profits. Okay, last question. When do you get the most profit? So we're looking for the most. So the most profit is here, here, and here, which would be 0, 6, and 12. So it would be on months 0, 6, and 12. Now, if you think about it, aren't 0 and 12 the same, since it's periodic? So you technically could say either 0 and 6 or 6 and 12, because 0 and 12 are the same, because they're the same beginning and end of the year. Imagine you're playing in the ocean. That's a lot of fun, for me at least. The waves make the water level go up and down at a constant rate. Assume the water's lowest point is 3 feet high, and then 4 seconds later, the highest point is 7 feet high. If the waves make a sinusoidal function, then answer the following. Now, waves or water level. Okay, maybe we should put a water level there. Anyways, so can you think about it? If we start at the lowest point and then we're going to the highest point over 4 seconds, let's draw a picture of this. So the lowest point is 3. So let's start at lowest point of 3. All right? So I'm going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going by 7 because the highest is going to be 7. My lowest is 3. My highest is 7. So don't we start at a lowest of 3? All right? And then my highest is going to be 7. So I'm going to go all the way up, and at some point we're going to hit our high of 7. And isn't that high going to be at 4 seconds? and this one is feet. So feet is up and down, seconds. Now, what kind of graph is this looking like? What kind of graph starts low and goes to a high? That is a cosine graph. But this is only half of a cosine graph. Don't we have to finish it off? This is only half the cosine graph. So don't we have to go over here, and at 8, when we come back down to 3, we need the full cosine graph. Okay, be careful. So the period is going to be 8, not 4. Just from low to high is 4 seconds. All right. Now let's find the middle of this graph. Well, to find the middle, you can just take 7 plus 3 and divide by 2, which is 10 over 2, which is 5. Which, if you look at that, that does make sense. 5 right here is the middle. Visually, you can see that. 5 is the middle. Okay, so we have 5 feet middle. Now, since this is cosine, where do you hit the midline? Well, don't you hit it halfway between again? So here, aren't you going to hit the middle? And here, aren't you going to hit the middle? So what I have now is a cosine graph depicting my water level, which is what creates waves closer to the ocean. So your water level going up and down, up and down, up and down. All right, I have the graph. Now I want to come over here, midline amplitude period, so I can make an equation. Well, your midline from the picture we just drew is y equals 5. Let's put feet. 5 feet. Our amplitude. Well, let's see. From 5, aren't we going up 2, down 2, up 2, down 2? So I'm going to say my amplitude is going to be 2 feet. And your period. Well, your period was not 4. Half your period is 4. Your whole period is 8 seconds. From low back to a low. So our period is 8 seconds. Now we want to make an equation. Now to make an equation, we have to find our b, not our period. So we have to calculate b. b is going to be 2 pi divided by your period, which is pi over 4. That's going to be important. So let's write the equation. Y equals our amplitude, which is 2, but isn't it upside down? So won't this be a negative 2? Do you see that? Negative 2 because it's upside down. And we have a cosine graph. Alrighty. We're going to use pi over 4. So we go pi x over 4, or pi theta over 4, depends on what you want. Actually x, because these are angles. But pi x over 4. And our midline is 5. So right there would be the equation for this graph. Now for the extension here, if you are standing on the ocean floor the whole time, would you be above or below the water most of the time? Now when I say above, let's talk about your chin being above, because you want to breathe. So you really don't care about your top of your head being above water, unless you just care about your hair not getting wet. I guess someone, I did my hair last week, I don't get all wet. But let's talk about your breathing, which is kind of important. So we got to think, okay, your mouth has to be above the average height of the water. And what's the average height of the water? 5. If your mouth is above 5 feet, you're going to be fine. You're going to be above water more than below. So the question here is, how do we answer this? Is, well, what you want is you want your mouth to be above 5 feet for this problem. So if your mouth is above 5 feet, then you're going to be above water most of the time. If your mouth is below 5 feet, more of the time you're going to be underwater, not breathing, or holding your breath.